the show. I'm Megyn Kelly, and we begin today with a shocking report about babies and toddlers being separated from their parents along our southern border. We have known for weeks that the Trump administration is separating thousands of children from their families who are crossing the border unlawfully from other countries. But up until today, we were not sure where the youngest children were. Now the Associated Press is reporting that the Trump administration is housing these babies and toddlers in what they are calling tender age shelters in South Texas. The AP cites lawyers and medical workers who say they visited the facilities and found them clean and well kept, but filled with children who are hysterical and crying, needing their parents. Savannah Guthrie is going to join me on this in a minute, but first we start with NBC's Craig Melvin, who is in McAllen, Texas, with the very latest. Craig?
3 of those shelters, by the way, so far, Megyn Kelly, word that they are looking at constructing a 4th tender age shelter. Meanwhile, as lawmakers in D.C. scramble to come up with some sort of solution to this crisis, I can tell you here along the border, it's only getting worse. More desperate families trying to find out some sort of information, any nugget of information about a child who's been separated. This, as anger is boiling over, anger directed at Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, who for a lot of folks has become one of the faces of this policy. Nielsen nearly booed out of a restaurant in Washington, D.C. just a day after she defended this zero-tolerance policy.
Shame! Shame! Shame!
The face of the Trump administration's controversial family separation policy, Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen blasted by protesters overnight while trying to eat dinner at a Mexican restaurant in the nation's capital.
Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen is in a Mexican restaurant of all places. The goal. Shame on you! Shame!
Nielsen tried to ignore the shouting before finally leaving. This, as a new report surfaced overnight, not verified by NBC News, saying the Trump administration is housing hundreds of babies and toddlers in at least 3 facilities in South Texas. The Associated Press reporting lawyers and medical providers who have visited the tender age shelters described playrooms of crying preschool-aged children in crisis.
Muchas gracias.
The Mexican government condemning the president's zero-tolerance policy, calling it cruel and inhumane. Officials there pointing to one case involving a 10-year-old girl with Down syndrome who was separated from her mother last week and sent to a detention center in Texas.
Sure.
On Fox News overnight, former Trump advisor Corey Lewandowski mocked the mention of the young girl.
I read today about a 10-year-old girl with Down syndrome who was taken from her mother and put in a cage. I read about did you say want to a 10-year-old with Down syndrome being taken from her mother?
Pick anything you want out, but
Now, anger and frustration is mounting on Capitol Hill, with leaders in the president's own party saying they are eager to change the separation policy.
It's not American to do this.
There's no justification for families being separated.
Late Tuesday, the president met with House Republicans.
We're going to try and see if we can fix it. Thank you very much.
But in the halls, a group of Democrats were waiting for him.
Mr. President, don't you have kids?
2 sources tell NBC News the president told Republicans he wants to see a solution for immigration that deals with border security, provides money for the wall, and reunites kids with families. And as the pressure builds, the president is doubling down. Speaking at a small business event earlier in the day, Mr. Trump literally hugging an American flag and taking a hard line.
We have no wall. We have no border security. Without a border, you don't have a country.
An update now on that 10-year-old who was taken into custody with Down syndrome. We just heard from a government official a short time ago who tells us that the mother is not going to be prosecuted. The child was taken because officials think she was part of some sort of child smuggling incident, the mother being taken into custody as a witness to the smuggling. Meanwhile, some new reporting also out just a few moments ago. It's costing the government $775 per night to keep each child separated from their family, considerably more expensive than it would be to keep that child with his or her parents. Megyn?
Wow. Craig Melvin, thank you so much. Joining us now to break it down, Savannah Guthrie is with us. Savannah, come on out. What a thing, right? I know you guys have been leading with this every day. We've been leading with it every day. This has like dominated the national conversation for well, really weeks now, but in the past week, as we started to get the pictures of what's happening, it's really been shocking.
It is shocking. Gosh, it's just really hit me hard too. I think, you know, if you're a parent and you have little kids and you just imagine them not having their mom or their dad. I mean, this is not about politics, what I'm saying right now. This is just, you know, I mean, I'm thrilled to hear that these tender care shelters have them well fed and clean and all, and that's great, you know, and that's literally the minimum. That's the least we could do and should be doing, of course. And I don't take that for granted, but I mean, if you're a child, you need your parent. You know, I go home every day to a little girl and a toddler boy, and, you know, they're calling for mommy all day long. And I just, you know, and you can see it. I mean, on both sides of the aisles. I mean, you see Republicans and Democrats saying, like, this family separation just can't be the answer.
It's not us.
We got problems. We have big problems at the border. That's true. We have to do something about it. There's no question about it. But separating families just can't be the answer. There's got to be a different answer.
I mean, even you've got Ted Cruz, who is no softy when it comes to illegal immigration, saying, we can't have this, this is wrong, and submitting a proposal. The problem is, even if you are, you know, as anti-illegal immigration as they come, you can't deny that what we're seeing with the children being ripped away from their parents feels immoral. It feels wrong. And I know President Trump is trying to deter this from happening. And it's a good message to the people who mean to cross our southern border without permission, right? Without having gotten asylum or gone through the proper channels. Don't do that, especially now, because you're running a serious risk of being separated from your child, possibly permanently.
I know, but
if we're going to do it, we have to do it humanely. We have to figure out a way that ensures the return of the children to the parents, that ensures babies have their moms.
Here's the thing. There's two sides of this argument, right? Some people say, look, you cannot have a whole class of folks who know if they cross the border, you come with a child, you won't be thrown in jail, you won't face the consequences. And that is what I believe the Trump administration is trying to rectify. That situation is not tenable. You can't, that's not sustainable. Okay, fair enough. I'm not sure I buy the deterrent argument, because what they're saying is, first of all, that this message is going to be transmitted back to Guatemala or Honduras or wherever in such pure form that people understand, gosh, if I come, I might lose my child. Even if you got that message, I think about those situations in those countries. They are terrible. Those families are leaving because they think their children will die if they stay. If I were in a burning building and my choice was to throw my daughter down a 3-story building and perhaps she would survive versus the certain death of the burning building, I probably would take the chance. And I think that's the calculation that these families are making. I think they're saying, I will take a risk. I will take even the risk of being separated from my child because I know if I stay here, it is certain death.
That's right.
I think that's the issue.
The problem is you've got families just like that, and then you do have people who take advantage of those families' desperation by intentionally bringing a child because they think it'll get them out of
Using
jail.
them as human shields.
They think it'll get them
despicable.
out of detention faster, and they exploit the children and the system.
And John Kelly, who's the White House Chief of Staff, as I understand it, has learned and has concerned about the journey itself being so dangerous, so damaging that, you know, I think that their rationale is don't make the journey. And that makes some sense.
Great.
I understand that.
But have a system in place, because what we're seeing now is the former ICE director, John Sandwhite, came out and said these family separations in many cases may be permanent. It's a very difficult reunification process. And even in the past, when we weren't doing this zero tolerance thing, we had, in some cases, the inability to reunite the child with the parent because the parent's asylum claim takes a lot longer than dealing with a child. Well, the children, you know, they're not perceived as a threat. And so they're on two different tracks. And one may get deported and returned to their home country before the other, and without the appropriate records. To reunite them. And that can't be the penalty for doing it. For crossing the southern border without permission is a misdemeanor.
Right.
The punishment has to fit the crime.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just, that's why I just keep butting my head against, because I really do. I mean, you're a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. I really enjoy and try to understand all the arguments on each side, because I just want to understand it. What do you say? What do you say? Okay, who's got the better of it argument? But whatever side you're on in terms of the policies or what we should do about immigration, the answer just can never be take children from their parents. It just can't be. And I think that members of Congress on both sides of the aisle say that. Even the president says that, although it is his administration's policy that's allowing this to happen.
Anything about it.
Well,
he isn't doing anything about it.
I'm saying I'm trying to stay as fair-minded and neutral as I possibly can because I think we need more of that just in our coverage period.
We do.
But it's just, you can't be taking children from their parents. That just can never be the answer.
The bottom line is that even if you're 100% in favor of Trump's policy and you want a stricter approach at the southern border, then plan for it. Make sure the system is in place to protect these families, and we can be as hardline as we want to be when it comes to protecting, quote, our country and having borders, but humanely, because that's also what we stand for as Americans. It doesn't seem to be shutting down anytime soon. I will say just the level of discourse, from Corey Lewandowski, what he said, to even shouting down Secretary Nielsen, when she's having dinner. I understand tempers are raging right now, but just decency.
I agree on both counts. We got to be better than this.
Right? Great to see you.
You too.
Thank you, lady.
Wish it was better circumstances.
I know, babe. I want to tell you that NBC's Jacob Soboroff is going to be anchoring a special Dateline, The Dividing Line, this Sunday, 7, 6 Central. We'll be right back.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.